It's our pleasure to welcome you all as EYDK today, the National Advisory Board for Impact Investing, to host our panel and panelists on the topic of alignment of faith-based investment and impact investing with the Sustainable Development Goals. EYDK, the National Advisory Board for Impact Investing, was established in May 2021 to raise awareness for impact investing and to build an ecosystem for impact investing in the country. And also we are in touch with our stakeholders, with our members coming from different sectors, from the public sector, private sector, and the non-profit sector, to point the strategic priorities of the country for the Sustainable Development Goals and impact investing, and also to prepare policy recommendations for all sectors. So that is who we are. And we are hosting a panel today as we have recently established a working group for faith-based aligned investments, the convergence of faith-based investments with impact investing and the SDGs. First of all, I would like to welcome our panelists and to introduce them one by one. So on my right, I have Mr. Mohammed Dawood, the Managing Director and Menat, Head of Islamic Finance from HSBC. On the very right, I have Ms. Seçil Kızılkaya Yıldız from the Executive Vice President from the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey. And on my left, I have Mr. Ali Kemal Küçükcan, Executive Vice President of Turkey Emlak Participation Bank. And on my very left, I have Mrs. Fatma Çınar, Director from the Participation Banks Association of Turkey. Welcome you all. When we look into the world, we see that the world is changing. We are more and more exposed to sustainability. So sustainability is mainstreaming now. When we think about 10 years ago, it was different. It was like a different, just the beginning of a new era. But now it's mainstreaming. And when we think about the $4 trillion gap for to meet the SDG agenda in the world, we need to capitalize, we need to mobilize more capital for impact investing and for SDG-based investments. And for that, we need more alternative and innovative instruments and investments to be included in the market. In that sense, faith-based finance takes a great role. According to a report prepared by Oxford University Said Business School, the faith-based finance amounts to $4 trillion. These were the numbers for last year. And $5 trillion actually, and $3 trillion of it consists of Islamic finance, whereas the rest, the $2 trillion, represents the faith-based finance, representing Christianity and Judaism and other dharmic religions. So there's a great potential there that we need to mobilize, and for that reason we have established a working group at EYDK to work on this, to see what we have in our hands, what inventory we have to go through the terminology together as a country, and to offer policy recommendations to all sectors, both the private sector and the public sector. So let's kick off the panel, and I will start with Mr. Mohammed Dawood. As HSBC is an active and global financial market player in the Islamic finance industry. We will ask for his suggestions to see the practical steps he's going to tell us here. How far has Islamic finance come down to the ESG path, and what more can be done to grow and accelerate down this path, Mr. Davut?
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here today. So Islamic finance really has been around for the last 50 or 60 years, and within that time, it's made a tremendous impact within its domestic markets. And if you look at the core of Islamic finance, the core of Islamic finance is very much around ethical investing. So when Islamic finance, when these institutions, Islamic banks, participation banks were set up, part of their mandate was to invest into sectors and areas which did not cause any harm to communities or societies. So, for example, armaments, gaming, alcohol, those sectors traditionally were excluded from investing or financing in Islamic finance. But Islamic finance at its very core is really about impact investing, I would argue. And it's about making a real change to societies and communities. And within the very DNA of Islamic finance is a desire to be able to protect communities, to protect the environment. But I think in the drive to develop Islamic finance, and while much progress has been made, I think we've fallen back slightly when it comes to focusing very much on what I would say the SDG type or the ESG goals. And I think Islamic finance, I think conventional finance over the last 10 years has really driven the agenda when it has come to ESG and sustainability. But so it's very much within our heart, it's very much within our core, and it's within our DNA. And I think Islamic finance now really does need to pick up and actively look at the promotion of this much more. So in the last, for example, 4 or 5 years, we've seen the development of, in the sukuk market, we've seen the establishment of green bonds, we've seen the establishment of sustainability bonds. But I think much more needs to be done at the grassroots level to be able to say, okay, what impact is Islamic finance making at a community level? What impact is Islamic finance doing to help reduce the pollution, to help reduce the rate of carbon emissions? And I think all of these are very important initiatives that Islamic institutions need to do. And I think historically, Islamic banks have lacked the manpower or the ability to understand the risk and the issues. I think that's slowly now beginning to change. And I think at a top-down level, within the ownership, among the regulators, within these institutions, I think there needs to be a much greater urgency on their part to be able to assess what impact is Islamic finance making on communities. Because really, the goal of Islamic finance is not just to extend financing. It's all part of the ecosystem to see the development of communities, to see the development of balance within our societies. So I think that's really important that we see that we add on capabilities into Islamic finance to help this grow. So within the key KPIs of Islamic institutions, just as we don't, for example, finance interest-based contracts, I think it should be within the DNA of Islamic banks to come up with what I would suggest annual reports which assess the impact that is being made at a society level, at a national level, and what they are doing to promote the SDGs. Because, as I said, there is no contradiction between the SDG goals and Islamic finance or Islamic law. It's very much part and parcel. There's a lot of alignment and harmony. But I think we need to go back to our roots and restart and reapply the application of these core principles back into our societies, our communities, to ensure that we really are making a very meaningful impact there.
Very, very well said, Mr. Davut. As you mentioned that we need to reach out the grassroots to raise more awareness about the fact that there's an alignment, a natural alignment between the value sets of faith-based finance, including Islamic finance, and impact investing. Thank you very much for your first remarks. I'm now turning to Seçil Kızılkaya Yıldız to talk about, to press on the specific key instrument in Islamic social finance, which we call zakat. So, in your view, Seçil Hanım, can you kindly elaborate on the potential of use of proceeds from wakaf, and we have the wakaf institution as well, and zakat pools with relevant structures, and can they be transferred to the construction of cities affected from the earthquakes recently?
Thank you very much, Şafak Hanım. I personally would like to thank you for bringing the impact investment into agenda of the country a couple of years ago. I also would like to thank the Directorate of the Climate Change for this very important panel. And I would like to thank you again for this panel, because Islamic finance is very much important in terms of ESG, and we need to bring it to the agenda of our country to further use it as a public finance tool going forward. Before coming how we can use the proceeds from zakat and wakaf pools for reconstruction of cities, I would like to mention a couple of words regarding the earthquake, which was the deadliest one in the history of country up until now, unfortunately. There were 50,000 of loss of lives, like 100,000 people were injured, and approximately 20,000 buildings were destroyed. The reconstruction of cities is very much important, of course, and for the investment of the reinvestment or recovery of the cities, there is about $105 billion is needed. This is for pure reconstruction, but it's for infrastructure and for residential buildings. And building a resilient city is not only reconstruction of the city, is not only a like green technology city, or is not only building good infrastructure. It's also building a city with social aspect, which is like, building a city with a good quality of life provided to everybody, good quality of education to children, a good quality of transportation. So if you would like to, and good quality of course, life to everybody, like vulnerable groups and disadvantaged groups. And if you would like to reconstruct a resilient city, then you need to further finance these aspects as well. Of course, we are going to find approximately $100 billion to reconstruct all these in terms of residential buildings or the other buildings and infrastructure. But we need to further educate the children who lost their parents. We need to get into employment the women who lost their families, which were not in the employment before then. So what I would suggest is to further discuss, for example, zakat as a public finance instrument, to further channel them to the children who lost their parents, to the education of children who lost their parents. Of course, this can be done in an organized way, and this can be further elaborated and discussed. But we need to find ways for blended finance. We need to find ways for financing the social aspects. As Mohammed mentioned, actually, this is in our DNAs. The dynamics of the country is very much appropriate for that. And I think all wakafs and zakats proceeds can, not all, but some part, can be channeled on a voluntary basis to this kind of social development. I would like to keep it short, because I promised to Ali Kemal. But as a last word, I would like to, of course, tell that, zakat pools are very much important, of course, is among with the Islamic finance. And I think we need to further discuss it. We need to further understand how we can use it as a blended finance concept and how we can channel it to the education, to the social aspects, to create social impact. And Zekat itself actually creates social impact on the society, which we are not so much aware of, because we are just, giving those money to the people who need it most. And in case we do it knowing that we becoming aware of this is creating a social impact, I'm sure all of us will be more happier. Thank you.
Thank you, Seçil Hanım. So let this panel to be a start for these discussions to see zakat and vakıf institutions to become a pool, to become a supply for SDG finance as well. We have to start the discussion anyway. I'm turning to Mr. Ali Kemal Küçükcan now. Emlak Participation Bank is has a pioneering role in green and sustainable sukuk in Turkey, while emphasizing impact and aligning with the impact finance principles at the same time. So I would like to ask about your experience and your insight for your efforts in sustainability. And I know that you're about to launch the first municipality green sukuk in the world, not only in Turkey. So would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot for having me, first of all. And I want to thank, on behalf of my institution as well, to be here, to take part in this panel. And I'm happy to be with the long time friends, as you see here, in the panel itself. And then Seçil, I'm 100% okay. You can use my time as well here. No problem there. For those who are not familiar with my institution, I'll just briefly maybe give a very short introduction who we are. Emlak Katılım is the youngest state-owned Islamic bank, so-called participation bank in the sector. We started our operations back in 2019 March, so we're going to celebrate our 5th anniversary next upcoming March this year. On the ownership, we are owned 100% by Ministry of Treasury and Finance, but on the organizational level, we are reporting to Ministry of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change, which is a unique kind of like status that the bank has, in that we are reporting to 2 different ministries. And of course, being under the roof of Ministry of Environment, it's very natural that having a sustainable or green fields at the core or at one of the main activity areas in our bank activities. And about our journey in the field, those who work in this area or somehow touch to sustainability and green, they would for sure, especially the bankers, it's not easy to establish a proper infrastructure and working model in this area here. It requires bringing in some certain important factors together, like vision, will, and support of the top management, experienced human resources, plus hard work of the related teams. In our own experience, we were lucky enough to bring all these together. And I want to thank my colleagues here. They are here with us today. Our investment banking team put a tireless effort in the field and hard work since day one. Our first step in the process was taking part in the zero waste project of the government, which was sponsored by Ministry of Environment. That was back in 2020, which created a little bit awareness within the bank, within the employees. And then we started to work on our sustainable finance framework, establishing our sustainable finance framework program to set the base for our green and sustainable issuances going forward. And our program was established, our framework was established with strong references to the international institutions, well-known institutions like international capital markets association like IDB, Islamic Development Bank, Malaysia Security Council Commission, and Indonesia Bonds and Sukuk framework. The process there also included a second-party opinion by an accredited independent audit company in Turkey. We completed this framework in the middle 2021 and then issued the first ever green sukuk of Turkey in November 2021. That was like around $2.5 million worth of local issuance. That was in Turkish lira. And that was followed by another sukuk, green sukuk we issued on behalf of Turkish Wealth Fund, their subsidiary Istanbul Finance Center. We arranged that sukuk as the first customer sukuk in Turkey, green sukuk. I just want to touch upon the regulatory authorities' maybe involvement as to how they can impact to kind of develop the process.
Actually, Ali Kemal Bey, we will touch upon that point in the second part of our conversation.
Okay.
But thank you for your first remarks. And although Emlak Participatory Bank is a young institution, you are going to celebrate your 5th year soon. You have achieved a long way. Now, sukuk issuances are thriving in the country, in Turkey, but you're one of the pioneers in the market, and you have great examples. Thank you for sharing those with us. I'm now turning to Fatma Çınar, Director at Participation Banks Association of Turkey, which is a very important institution that has a facilitator role in of participation banks for raising awareness and the convergence of SDGs and impact investing, Islamic finance, and the SDGs. And I would like to ask you, Fatma Hanım, how do you engage your stakeholders in the ecosystem to integrate sustainability and SDGs into the business?
Thank you very much. First of all, warmest welcome to all the audience from online and here physically. And glad to be here to discuss this very important convergence with Islamic finance or faith-based investment and impact investment. I just want to give a very fresh data announcement from Islamic Finance Development Indicator. Just last week announced total asset size of Islamic finance industry now reached $4.5 trillion with 11% increase compared to previous year. So as you mentioned at beginning of the discussions, we need around $4 trillion financing for SDG financing gap. So we cannot ignore the potential of Islamic finance and also what we discussed till now with the organic engagement and purpose of Islamic finance with impact on society and individuals. So we have a growing industry which also targeting social impact investing as a strategic goal for all activities. So we have a huge potential. And also I just want to touch upon the idea of impact in Islamic finance. It is originated from Maqasid al-Sharia. This is which means that objective of Islamic law for the society. So it is a common philosophy, principles which shape the activities of the institutions. Now we are talking about how we can institutionalize Maqasid al-Sharia. Just again a very fresh announcement from global industry. In Malaysia, Islamic Capital Market Institution announced a guideline how to the implementation of Maqasid al-Sharia for Islamic finance transactions. Which means that now we are much more closer and clear how we can engage with SDG agenda. And back to 2015, announcement of United Nations for Sustainable Development Goals, Immediately, Islamic Development Bank also announced their planned strategic alignment for UN SDG goal, which is a global goal for all society, universal goal. And after 2 years, 2017, we have a very important initiative by IDB and UN, Global Islamic Finance and Impact Investment Platform. Because UN has 170 country coverage and IDB has 57 members, countries, and there are mutual countries which they can conduct projects for serving for the society, especially vulnerable and also which needs especially social financing for their needs, for their adaptation to the society, which they cannot borrow from the banks or financial institutions, which they cannot have necessary collateral for credit alignments. So it looks that from the supranational initiatives like IDB, UN, now we are coming to market players to take necessary roles for financing of SDGs. This is how we work, with a manner. Now we are now where we need to deliver this understanding to real sector and also customers. Increase awareness how they can contribute. For example, Seçil touched the point of zakat. Zakat is an individual responsibility in Islam. So persons, people personally can also contribute social finance agenda of SDGs individually. So this holistic approach is very critical. In terms of engagement with those international institutions, we have a MOU as association with UNDP because we do consider capacity and also potential of those institutions to support this agenda. We have totally 8 members as association, 6 of them full-fledged Islamic banks and 2 of them digital banks, and 1 full-fledged is on the way. Totally our asset size is $65 billion. So we do consider to activate, to trigger this financing for the sustainable finance projects. That's why we first initiated capacity building programs. First, we arranged programs with UNDP, IDB, and also some other institutions like Impact Investing, National Board engagement. First, we increase awareness about we are an ecosystem. We are serving for the same goals. Despite we financial institution, we are an NGO, or we are another institution, we have mutual goals in addition to corporate goals. So maybe later on I can give some concrete engagement examples how we take these mutual goals into place to have concrete results.
Thank you very much, Fatma. I think it's notable to press on the fact that there is a global recognition and understanding about the convergence of Islamic finance and impact investing, given the protocols made between UNDP Private Sector Center and Islamic Development Bank, and also with your entity, with TKBB, to run the agenda in Turkey as well. Thank you very much for your remarks. I'm now turning to Mr. Davut again to ask my second question. Considering your active role as a global financial market player, what role can Islamic finance regulators play in driving the SDG agenda, and are there lessons to be learned?
Absolutely. I think the role of regulators really cannot be overestimated or underestimated. I think because it's the regulators who are really setting down the agenda for the growth of Islamic finance, and they are creating the framework, the legal framework in many countries. For example, Turkey, the regulators have played a very important role in creating the legal framework to allow for the growth of Islamic finance. And as part and parcel now to accelerate the growth of this, I think it's really important now that the regulators then set out clear targets and goals that they, for each Islamic bank, for the Islamic finance sector, and their expectations as to how they would impact their societies, their communities. So, for example, in Malaysia, we've seen the Malaysian Central Bank bring out a methodology for value-based investments. Here in the UAE, very recently, the UAE Central Bank's higher Sharia authority has brought out new regulations for sustainability. So there is an expectation that they want the Islamic banks to play a much more active and engaging role in helping to drive the national ESG sustainability agenda. And I think as part of that, it's really down to regulators then to help these institutions fill in the people's gap. So there is a people's gap. There needs to be people, dedicated people with experience and expertise there. And then I think then in terms of the expectation, in terms of how much of the financing book should be allocated towards ESG. And also then the central bank should then, I believe, set out targets for what impact these institutions are making there. I think the regulators also have to play other roles as well, for example, in the establishment of other institutions. So, for example, in social finance, we talk about social finance. Within Pakistan, there is an organization called Al-Huwat, which is set up on a private sector basis, focusing really on the underbanked, the economically disadvantaged people, and providing interest-free social finance, microfinance loans. That of the last 10, 15 years has now impacted more than 5 million people. They've provided more than $100 million worth of financing, and they have a repayment rate of 99.99%. In other countries where Islamic finance is present, I think the regulators can play a role by opening up social finance. They can play a role in nature-based solutions. So, for example, in Turkey, your textile sector is very important. Helping, for example, helping to reduce, for example, the pollutants that the textile operators use in the colors, in the dyes. There is a need to develop what I would say would be bankable solutions which Islamic banks can finance. So I think the regulators can play a role in helping to set up the infrastructure which would then allow these Islamic banks to serve and to finance projects which have been targeted. So the regulator's role, from my perspective, cannot be underestimated. I think it's hugely important. And I think, where regulators are focused on driving Islamic finance as a national agenda, I think ESG needs to be very much part and parcel of that.
Thank you very much for sharing these facts. And I think the government, the public agencies play a crucial role to be the entrepreneur of these new concepts to be implemented in the markets, isn't it? And for regulators, regulation is the key. So we need that. For instance, microfinance has been implemented for like 20 years in Turkey. For the last 20 years by one foundation only. We couldn't yet produce any microfinance law. Maybe we should think about it. We should press on that fact. And in Turkey, actually, the finance office of the presidency is leading the way for Islamic finance, which is now existing in their strategy document, and also the Istanbul Financial Center has been established and announced, and it has two teams. One is Islamic finance, and the other team is fintech. So we are getting there. Turning to Seçil Hanım again. Would you please talk about the potential of the sukuk market? We know that you are very much into it, and we need to learn maybe more about the sukuk market, the potential in Turkey, and how can we deepen the market? What do you think?
Thank you very much. Actually, the sukuk regulations is quite young in the country. You know, the sukuk regulation was issued in 2013. It's approximately 10 years old. But starting from then, currently 14% of the prevailing issuances are sukuks among the debt capital products. This is huge compared to the other countries as well. In the worldwide, it's approximately 4/1,000. And I would like to, as the country, we are among the 5 countries as per the sukuk issuances. And in Malaysia, for example, it's 63% of the entire issuances. In Saudi Arabia, it's 47%. Indonesia, it's 22%. In Kuwait, it's 22%. And in Turkey, it's 14%. The other markets are older than us. For the time being, having 14% of issuances in terms of numbers is quite huge number. And we are developing very fast, I would say. So to further develop the sukuk markets, I would give a couple of advices maybe. What we can do further. Actually, we need to expand the range of sukuk investors, first of all. So we need to structure the products in a way to make them more attractive to the investors. The first thing is this. And the second thing is, actually, there is no secondary market in the sukuk market, as Ali Kemal can agree. So we need to, it's illiquid market for the time being, the local sukuk market, and we need to make it liquid so that the investors should not have to keep them until the end of the maturity. This is very important for them as well. And we need the longer term of sukuks. This is what we discussed with Fatma actually beforehand. But in terms of Turkish lira issuances, you know, the longest maturities are like 2 years. We need to make it longer for the investors who are going to invest it, who are going to finance their capex investments. And of course, we can make it like public offerings. I mean, currently we are selling the entire issuances to the corporate investors. So in case we do it public offerings, then the individuals would come and invest to sukuks. Again, as the development and finance institution of the country, we are the Development Finance Corporation of Turkey. We are very much active in sukuk market, and we are mandated to further deepen and develop the sukuk market and capital markets as well. So in that respect, we are ready to do further actually in terms of developing all this market. And in addition, I would like to mention again the earthquake. You know, the earthquakes, I mean, it was a very big disaster, and actually it cost like 10% of the entire GDP. In terms of GDP, we have like $1 trillion of GDP. We are among the 13 countries. We are the 13 countries all around the world in terms of GDP. We are a very large country, actually. But 10%, unfortunately, went far away because of the earthquake. And now in 2023 and 2024, 5.5% of the entire GDP is growing out of these reconstruction expenses. Again, we need to further finance all these expenses. It's a huge amount. As I mentioned, for the reconstruction, it's like $100 billion, 10% of our entire GDP, I mean. So we are trying to structure some products like catastrophe bonds and resilient bonds, and we are actually currently discussing whether we can structure them as per sukuk structure, the resilience sukuks, for example, for reconstruction of the cities. For the social aspects, I mentioned Zekat, and Fatma agreed, and maybe we can further discuss how we can do it in social terms. And in terms of reconstruction of cities, we really need it, and for cat bonds and for resilience bonds, I'm sure we are going to structure them as sukuk structure as well, and it will be an example for the entire world, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So to sum up, regulation is crucial. We need incentives and designing new products as well. Speaking of regulation, the need of regulation. Ali Kemal Bey, I would like to take your view about regulatory, the role of regulatory authorities to achieve the sustainable finance, goals, if I
Sure.
may say.
Sure.
Maybe we should give a message to the authorities. What would you like to say?
Yeah, well, sure. Well, sustainability and green subjects are relatively new and being spoken about for the last decade and a half, maybe. And of course, as financial institutions and players in the market, we are trying to increase the awareness of our stakeholders, our own employees, all business partners. But of course, it's not enough. I mean, to be realistically speaking, with this standalone, I would say, efforts of just 10 to 15 banks, it's not going to be enough for sure. Not easy to convince all your business partners towards the same aim here. Therefore, it is very crucial and essential that regulatory authorities step in and create some motivation tools to bring people together, or business partners, community, all economy and ecosystem to move towards the achieved or desired goals, to achieve desired goals here, for sure. Well, these are ideas already that we share with the authorities in various different platforms. Just to give an example of 3 different authorities, for instance, if the tax authority itself creates some tax incentives towards green and sustainable, maybe scopes or issuances for the investors, out of their maybe earnings, they will pay less taxes. It's going to be important, and you could attract more investors to the issuances there to motivate, to enhance the number and the amount of issuances there. And from, for instance, BRSA's, the supervision authorities' perspective, if somehow they decrease the risk weight for the banks when they make green loans, when they make sustainable loans, it's going to be easy, or kind of like motivation for the bank's balance sheet management. If you look at the portfolios today, if it is, I don't know, maybe 2%, 3% green loans, it will for sure enhance the green investments that the banks or the other financial institutions will make. Another example could be with central bank, for instance. As you know, almost all sector banks, for the liquidity management needs, we go and use the repo mechanism of central bank. Like we use our bonds or scoops as collaterals to get liquidity from central bank. If central bank kind of motivates the collateralization levels of green bonds or scoop issuances or sustainable linked issuances for achieving liquidity, that will for sure boost the financial institutions to invest in scoops, or like I said, green bonds or sustainable linked bonds. That will be maybe that's going to help to contribute to Seçil's comments about increasing the liquidity in the market in the scoop issuances. If it is by the central bank's motivation here, that will be a more, I would say, deeper maybe market for the scoops there.
Thank you very much. So finding different ways of developing the market is essential, but it all starts with raising awareness. And I would like to go back to Fatma Hanım in that sense again, because they play a great role in doing so. So how are the activities of your institution supporting the internalization of the and adaptation of the sustainable finance in participation bank? How do you raise awareness? How do you plan your activities to inform your ecosystem and communicate these principles or these kind of notions to your ecosystem?
So I will continue where I stayed. As Islamic banks, our, again, first mandate is to serve for real sector. We are intermediary institution for financing. So real sector will transform themselves in terms of investing their machineries, in terms of investing in their reporting system, and transforming their facilities for sustainable production places. They will require financing from the banks. So what's going on in Turkey from regulatory perspective and authority perspective? Because we are engaging those changes in the industry with regulatory bodies and participation banks for necessary adaptation. Our regulatory body is BRSA, Banking Regulation Supervision Agency. BRSA announced Sustainable Banking Strategy Report for 2022-2025. And under this strategy report, it's a guideline for Turkish banks, all the banks, how to adapt themselves, organizational structure, reporting structure, and product development for this transformation. And just newly they announced one communique. This communique is about green asset ratio and one guideline for transformation adaptation for climate change. With Bank Association in Turkey, together we collaborate. We are conducting working group studies for this adaptation. What we are doing? For limit allocation for companies during their financing demands, we need to have new criteria, eligibility criteria for giving financing. So we are now exactly setting these criteria sector by sector. We selected 6 sectors initially. We started with energy as naturally. And during these discussions, the banks first providing necessary presentation about the industry, then the necessary taxonomy, and also some additional performance criteria for this eligibility criteria. So those are some critical discussions, but what is good, it is on agreement base, because it is a new concept. It should be adaptable, not theoretical. It should be adaptable, and we will transform this taxonomy with our credit allocation strategies to the customers. So we coming year will be very critical, because we will see how the real sector will adapt those changes in limit policies, credit policies of the banks. And other institutions, very important, this is Public Oversight Authority. Now they are actively collaborating with ISSB for sustainable finance requirements, standards. So we need standards, because just in Turkey we have 57 banks operating, and they should standardize their applications in specific structure guidelines. This public oversight institution will supervise and also provide necessary standards as a reference for the banks. And I want to come to point that just last 2 minutes. Why we are discussing this issue? What happened? While I was in university in 2000, as a thematic area, I generated an article on global warming. And I just focused on global warming, how while using perfumes, how we providing harm to the atmosphere. This is the only topic. No factories, carbon issues, and other issues. What happens? It looks that there is something balance problem on production and consumption. This is the root problem. This is the main problem. We should also concentrate on consumption side. So there should be necessary awareness about for managing, controlling our consumption, because our resources are limited. Even now, we are using atmosphere and resources of our kids, our next generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this was a personal touch. It starts, I mean, sustainability starts with with a personal perspective, but consumer behavior is another area that we should touch upon while we are doing our policies, I believe. We had a great panel. I would like to thank our panelists. We heard different perspectives from different speakers from different sectors. Thank you very much for attending this panel, and I hope it was fruitful and useful for the audience today. As EYDK, the National Advisory Board, we will keep up the work to discuss the alignment of faith-based investments, finance with impact investing, and we will do so. We will present these activities or implement suggest our policy recommendations in the country, in Turkey, not only in Turkey, but we will be in touch with the GSG community as well, as EYDK is a member to GSG, the Global Steering Group for Impact Investments, and we'll be in touch with the global network as well about this specific topic. So I think we, conscious of time, we have 8 minutes to conclude. If there are questions, we can lead the conversation with Q&A, please.
Thank you so much. This is Zahra Abu Taha. I'm from Jordan. I lived in Turkey for 3 years with my husband and my kid. So what I noticed in Turkey, it's just like my country, you have like a huge amount of youth. The population percentage is like youth community. So for the panel, what are your plans or even like the policy toward youth and supporting green entrepreneurship? Do you have any special incentives for them or special programs for them, like less hardness criteria for accepting loans or supporting? And my other question for you, Fatma Hanem, the 6 sectors that you spoke about, one of them is energy, the rest sectors, what was there? Yeah.
So let's give the floor to Fatma Hanım first to answer the question, and then I will try to, if I may, answer the question about youth unemployment particularly.
According to the Banking Regulation Supervision Agency taxonomy requirements, all the sectors should be classified with necessary adaptation for low carbon transformation. Mainly, we are taking reference of UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program requirements. Those 6 industry is like initially selected because we should convert our policies as soon as possible. One is energy, and we have construction industry, steel and metal industry among this. Agri industry is one of the industry which we will also work on it. Those are just selected initially, but this is not the only industries. All the industries of the country will be prioritized and classified according to this low carbon transformation. Those working group studies, those are preparation for the BRSA requirements. BRSA provided excellent guidance with the necessary taxonomy eligibility criteria. I can share with you later on the official document of BRSA, both green asset ratio and also adaptation for climate change. You can see all the classification and the industries breakdown and all details.
So coming back to your question about youth unemployment, youth unemployment is an issue in Turkey, as in many countries. It's almost 40%, the percentage for youth unemployment in Turkey, what we call NEET numbers, like not in education, not in employment. Where are these people, these young people? So the Ministry of Industry and Technology has announced the 2023 and actually 2022 and 2023 as the youth year. The youth, they are specifically focused on youth unemployment. Therefore, we have started to build a social impact bond starting in February 2021. It started with a bidding with EBRD. EBRD was involved, and then we ended up structuring a bond, first doing a feasibility study for 18 months, and then structuring a social impact bond about youth unemployment in Turkey, focused on digital talents, especially coding. And this was then delivered, actually signed. The bond was signed in this summer, and launched in August by the Ministry of Industry and Technology, where Bridges Outcomes Partnerships acts as an impact investor, and Istanbul Development Agency acts as an outcome payer, and we have a service provider. So it's a pilot project, it's a small project, but it is important because Turkey never had such a contract before, so now we do have it. We do have the pilot, and it's going to be scaled, of course. Scaling is the second part of it, although it was a little project in the beginning. That is a good tool to start with. And I know that you're from Jordan, aren't you? And there is a SIB, a social impact bond, delivered in Jordan as well. Maybe we can talk about it later. So I think we're just almost there. So I'm just wrapping up the panel, if I may, if there are no more questions. There is one more question, gentleman in the back.
Hello, Halil Metin from private sector, Turkey. Thanks to all participants, and thanks to Fatma Hanım, I got very good sentence from you. What happens? Why now we are talking about carbon and emissions? That's the right questions. And for the private sectors, the main questions for motivational bosses, really they don't want to be involved, and they don't want to make investment in a short time. And now there is a big stress for taxation till 2026. We have just 2 years. And now really we don't have any tool to get support from our bosses. Because of that, we would like to know what kind of support that we can get from bank, from government. That's the key point. Thank you.
I think we need someone from the government here, but maybe next time. So I will leave the floor to Fatma Hanım.
So definitely this agenda also discussing with the Chamber of Commerces in Turkey, who are representative of real sector, because you need special packages, special financing to make necessary financing from the banks, at least at transformation period. And also there are institutions like Credit Guarantee Fund, and also just newly Islamic Credit Guarantee Fund established. Those institutions also studying with Turkish Treasury special guaranteed packages for sustainable finance transformation. The eligibility criteria for getting this financing and this collateral will be if as an institution you will utilize this financing for this transformation. So definitely the government bodies with Turkish Treasury, with Chamber of Commerces, and also Turkish banks coming together, having some workshops, some programs, how we will manage this adaptation. You're right, the main work will be done at your side. We are just talking about how we can be intermediary for this. Maybe some advisory also solutions, because awareness in financial players is much more than you. So I think we need also some awareness programs, capacity building programs, at least prepare yourself, strategize yourself for this adaptation. And also, just back to you, we have also advisory companies. They are also putting sustainable finance as their core issue at their agenda. So they are also supporting the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatma. So raising awareness, it's a marathon, never ending. Thank you very much for your participation and the wonderful questions. And to our panelists again, thank you. Have a very good day.